Woodward Sports Network. Guys, you even need an introduction. I mean, the doc is here. It's Thursday. John Macaroon, the man, the myth, the legend, the publisher of All Lions, and of course, the host of the Detroit Sports Podcast, the ball knower, joining the show. Appreciate you joining the show as always. I want to start off before I get into the Lions. Just how you doing this morning? How you feeling coming off that tough loss this week? I know you had a lot of content to write about, but how you feeling today?
Yeah, definitely a tough loss. I know people are regarding the Lions heading into the postseason, final month of the season, but they still have 4 games to get right. Real quick before we get started, just want to give a quick shout out to Sean Baligian, one of the big inspirations why I even started to try and get into the media and podcasting. I know he might be going through a rough time right now, but the man will land on his feet. Sean Baligian, a great legend, a big inspiration for Doc, the Detroit Sports Podcast, even was willing to be interviewed by myself when I first started the project. I have a lot of respect for that man.
Yeah, same here, man.
Sean Baligian's the fucking man.
We
love Sean Baligian.
It's a big Sean Baligian fan club here. You can't keep a legend down like that for long, so he'll be back. I love that. Well said, John. I want to ask you, enough about the Bears game. Let's move forward. Denver Broncos, they're playing well, John. They're number 1 in takeaways. You got an offense that's kind of struggling to get going now. You get an offensive line fully back, healthy. You got a defense in the Broncos, at least run defense, that's last in the NFL. You look at this as an opportunity for the Lions to finally just get the run game back on track and not have to bail on it midway through the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, Frank Ragnow, Taylor Decker return back to practice. The offensive line hasn't been stellar the last couple games. And if you can't get to protect Jared Goff, you can't establish the run game, your offense is null and void. And I think that when you see a Denver Broncos defense, the way in which they played over the last stretch, you recognize they're dangerous. They're coming in to play at a high level. Mentor versus teacher, mentor versus student. I can't wait to see how the Lions match up against the Broncos. 2 very similar teams. Yeah, absolutely. The early analysis would be, you want to run the football, and it would open things up for Jared Goff and hopefully get this offense back on track. And I think everybody wants to see it. Do it in the third quarter. I mean, the issues that they have coming out of halftime, really inexplicable that they can't solve it, but I'm expecting the Lions to definitely establish the run and try and get play to Jared Goff's strengths, because if you don't, it could be more of the same with his issues.
Yes, John, it is no secret that the Lions, for the better part of 2 months, haven't played their best football, but they've managed to stay afloat. I mean, they're still 9-4. They're still in the driver's seat to win their division. But what has been the most concerning trend to you with the way the Lions have played as of late?
Yeah, very, very sloppy football, undisciplined. When Dan Campbell expresses that his football team is not following exactly the game plan and playing undisciplined, that indicates a lot of things. It indicates a football team that is not trending in the right direction. You recognize all the turnovers. I mean, obviously, clearly, Aiden Hutchinson making a key mistake at a critical time. Dan Campbell prides his team on shining in those critical moments, not jumping offside on 4th and 13 and having a play in which you leave Jerry Jacobs alone to get buried by the Bears' best wide receiver. So the difficulty with the Lions is they're not playing their best brand of football. They're trending in the wrong direction. So I'm definitely concerned about the turnovers. Obviously, Jared Goff with the interceptions, the fumbled exchange, he's not playing his best football. And I think when we look at a football team that is going to be in the postseason, I mean, it's almost a 99% shot. This team is going to be in the postseason. And I get people's panic. You should be panicked, because the goal is not to just get to the postseason. It's to compete. It's not to host a home playoff game and then get spanked by your opponent. The way in which the Lions are playing, they're not making adjustments to what others are doing. The Bears definitely played a zone defense and tried to take away the middle from Jared Goff. Where were the adjustments? It felt like Ben Johnson just wanted to power through and run the football when it wasn't working in the second half. And you're wondering, okay, can the Lions? Now, the book is out. The book is out on how to stop Jared Goff and limit Amon-Ra St. Brown in that offense. Can this Lions football team adapt and adjust moving forward? Because the book is out on how to make some plays and stop the Lions. And if they fail to make those critical adjustments, the postseason's not going to go well at all for the Lions.
John, and one thing and I know I asked you this every single week, but I'm going to keep doing it, John. How does Jameson Williams play 60% of the snaps and get one target, which was like 5 yards short of him? How does that make any... At this point, it seems like Jameson Williams, who's never gotten more than, 2-3 catches in a game, and really more than he had 6 targets this year in a Ravens game where you're just basically throwing Hail Marys down the field. It doesn't really... To me, it's not a true 6 targets. He should be getting more than 3 targets a game. John, can you explain that to me? What the hell is going on with Jameson Williams?
Yeah.
And he's basically just a decoy out there at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to go back to what Dan Campbell said. What were the initial goals this year for Jameson Williams? It was not yards. It was not catches. It's just do the fundamentals correctly. Line up properly. Understand your route concept. Understand your responsibility against different looks on defense. So obviously the man has talent. When you see him get the ball, you can't teach that kind of speed. We all want to see him be used like Tyreek Hill is. But Tyreek Hill is further along in his career. And at this point, we just have to accept the Lions are not drawing up plays for Jameson. I had an opportunity last week after the media kind of all talked to Jameson. I walked up to him and just asked. I said, look, there was a play, in the game where it looked like you were wide open, but Jared didn't get you. It seems like I'm seeing on film, you're always open, but you're not getting the ball. And he looked at me point blankly and said, I'm not the number one read on these routes. I'm not the number one read on a lot of these plays, which indicates to me, obviously, they're not drawing up a lot of plays for him. He's going to be in the game plan, handful of plays at this point. And similarly to your talk that you're going to have about Brian Branch, teams try incrementally to give guys more and more and more to see what they can handle. And unfortunately, at this point in time, the Lions are taking it very slow with Jameson Williams. You and I think Sam, everyone would believe you want to give this guy the football more. But when you got St. Brown, when you got Laporta, you got 2 running backs, you got an offense that's purring, they don't want to take the time right now to involve Jameson Williams more than what he's getting. And so unfortunately, this is what it's going to be. 2 to 3 catches, maybe an explosive here or there, but that's going to be it. I don't see Jameson Williams just lighting up the stat sheet. He'll get more primary read routes, but I don't think he'll end up having the targets like Amon-Ra St. Brown did. And it took Amon-Ra St. Brown 10 full games before he got acclimated with Jared Goff. It's going to take time, guys, and unfortunately, you got to wait to 24 to get the full Jameson Williams experience.
See, John Macaroon just gave us that inside information. Look at that, J-Mo even talking about. You know what? I'm also proud that J-Mo could have been like, yeah, I don't know either, John. I'm not getting the football. It's just BS. But it seems like he handled it pretty maturely. So that's good news.
No, that's 100% good news. And for anybody who watches this show, you know how I feel about Jameson Williams. And I've had lots of debates about him with pretty much the whole city of Detroit. So, John, I just got to ask you this. What percentage of the blame for Jameson Williams' lack of production would you say goes to him?
Yeah, I would say 35%. Ben Johnson, obviously when you look at it, if I'm Jameson Williams, I'm commanding the football. I'm going out publicly and saying, give me the football. There's nothing wrong with that. I understand he's trying to be professional, trying to work within the framework of everything going on. But look, he's still a young player, still learning his way, obviously was dealing with drops. And for Jameson Williams to earn more opportunity, Dan Campbell said he's earned more and more targets. He's playing better. He's inching along. So I expect him to get more opportunities. And part of it is he's not involved. He can't force Jared Goff to throw him the football. And you recognize when there's opportunities for him to run deep, Goff can't get it to him. I mean, that ball that Goff threw early in the second half, I believe, was woefully short. It was terrible. It was just one of those things in which when – in an offense that like Ben Johnson that is so pinpoint in terms of route concept, in terms of timing, route depth, it's so pinpoint that it's just going to take time for Jameson Williams. It's not all his fault. He's still a young player. It's mostly Jared Goff and the coaching staff's fault for not using a weapon that you have in a much better way.
John, what do you think about the switch up in the secondary? You got Kindle Vildor out there getting snaps, and he's kind of a guy that described as kind of a Swiss Army knife. He can play multiple positions. You got Iffy back out, obviously, after he recovered from that hand injury. Are you a fan of some of the changes AG's been making? How would you kind of evaluate this defense as of late? Because I do appreciate at least AG making a switch, because this Jerry Jacobs, he's struggling lately, John. There's no way around it. He's struggling.
Yeah, they're looking for answers. And obviously you've seen now Ifeatu Melifonwu has taken the place of Tracy Walker. It has been unfortunate for Walker in that, the Lions are starting to trend toward moving away from him. Obviously having Brian Branch, get in some packages at safety. But yeah, it's interesting in regards to Jerry Jacobs. Look, unfortunately in the NFL, he's undersized. He's a very physical cornerback. He can do some things with fundamentals and being positionally sound. But when opponents need the chunk yards, they pick on two players, and that's Will Harris when he got out there and Jerry Jacobs. And it's unfortunate. You saw the vast difference that the matchup between DJ Moore and Jerry Jacobs is not fair. It's not fair in any capacity. So obviously, Aaron Glenn and the defense are looking for any answers. Look, it's patchwork. It's not going to wow anybody. It's not going to be a situation in which it's going to make drastic differences. You don't have a true lockdown number one corner, and it's evident that teams are recognizing how to attack the Lions secondary. With Brian Branch, it's a situation in which obviously a rookie, and Aaron Glenn obviously wanted to give him more and more and more. I spoke to it when we talked about Jamison Williams. But unfortunately, when you give a player more and more and more, it just puts a lot on their plate, and the effectiveness wasn't exactly there. So after Brian Branch's injury, his play against the Bears, his snap count went down to around 55%, I believe, when he's been playing 95% of the snaps. And Aaron Glenn said, look, when players are in a situation in which they're young, what you do is you kind of take a little bit off of their plate. So he wants Brian Branch to focus specifically on the nickel cornerback spot, shine like he did early in his career, and then probably next year you can have this Swiss Army knife like Brian Branch play multiple spots. It's overwhelming, guys. It's not easy in a tough defensive scheme to understand all the concepts and the quick adjustments you got to make. It takes time. It takes mistakes. It takes all this full rookie year for Brian Branch to learn everything and get it down. And similar to how Glenn treated C.J. Gardner-Johnson with the Saints, this is how they're going to work with Brian Branch. I know it stinks to not have one of your best playmakers play 100% of defensive snaps, but Aaron Glenn's making do with what he's got, and it's just a lack of talent.
Sure. And yeah, when it comes to their defense, they're a little deficient in some places and also pretty injured when you look at some of the big players who haven't really contributed this year. But amongst all that, what is something that the Denver Broncos do that should scare you as a Lions fan?
Yeah. Guys, get ready. I can't wait for this matchup. Literally, Sean Payton, Dan Campbell cut from the same cloth. They might start the game with two onside kicks. It's going to be two teams that are going to be playing very aggressive. You heard the rhetoric coming out of Allen Park. Dan Campbell's nervous that Sean Payton wants to hang 50 on the Lions. Alex Anzalone echoed those sentiments. We've heard kind of why. Sean Payton, the ultimate competitor, he wants to rub the nose in it, and he wants the Detroit Lions to feel the wrath of what he's got going on. And you got to give credit to the Broncos. They've made a comeback. And what they do lately, obviously that defense struggled to start the year, but boy, guys, they're forcing turnovers at a very high rate. They sacked the quarterback. They come from the outside, and Nick Bonito, check out his film. Oh my goodness. I think the Broncos have 35 or 34 sacks this year. Half of them have come from the outside linebacker spot. They're going to pin their ears back and try to knock Jared Goff out of this game. They're going to be aggressive. They're going to try and limit what the Lions do. They're going to have to, the Broncos are going to be targeting Amon-Ra St. Brown to take him away from the game. I'm very concerned about the Broncos defense. They're going to be very aggressive. They're going to look to pin their ears back and get after Jared Goff where they can have success. So it's going to be very incumbent on this Lions football team to execute, play well late, and remember that this Bronco team, even if you get out to a couple touchdown lead, they're not going to give up. This is going to be probably one of the best games the Lions face this year. But I do believe they're going to be hyper-focused. They're going to want to win one for Dan Campbell because if you lose to Sean Payton, you're going to have one frustrated Dan Campbell. It's a big game, guys. If the Lions win the next two games, they get to the postseason. The motivation should be there for the Lions to step up and stop playing such sloppy football.
What do you make of Russ, John? I mean, like Russ last year, it seems like the common theme everyone's saying, at least I listened to the coaches speak, the Lions coaches, Lions players, it seems like it's confidence is the common answer for Russell Wilson. He's playing with a lot of confidence. You're taking kind of how he's been playing this season, how he's looked different. And the other thing I want to mention is that deep ball to Courtland Sutton. I think that's going to be a problem, John, unless you got Kirby Joseph making plays. But if I had to point one thing out that I'm worried about in the passing game, especially with how this secondary's playing, it's that Russell Wilson to Courtland Sutton connection, John. It truly is.
Well, Russell Wilson, to me, is a poor man's Jared Goff. I think that you can get to him. You can get to Russ. I think that obviously, he's a quarterback that earned that hefty contract, and I think the Seahawks made the right call in moving on, getting that haul from the Broncos. And you realize, okay, look, this is a player like any quarterback in the league. If you give him time, he can pick you apart. He can find his weapons. It's going to be important for Aiden Hutchinson, the interior of the defensive line, to force a little bit of pressure, get him out. He definitely can scramble. He definitely can find his targets. Yeah, Cortland Sutton, definitely a weapon that he has. But I don't think that he's a player that can just dominate a football game where he can just do it quarter after quarter, rep after rep, and series after series. I think the Lions have an opportunity to get a pick six, get right defensively against the Broncos. And look, Russell Wilson, I think at times can definitely be a very serviceable quarterback. But at the same time, I think the Broncos will be definitely looking in the draft for next. I know the contract is prohibitive. They way overpaid to get him. But at the same time, if you let him stand there and survey the field, he'll pick you apart. But if you pressure him, you get that opportunity now to have Alex Anzalone fully healthy and getting after it, and you pressure Russell Wilson, he'll give you the football.
We appreciate you, John. Good stuff today. You can check John's stuff out, of course, at Detroit Podcast, excuse me. Publisher All Lions, and he hosts the Detroit Sports Podcast. Thank you, John. Good luck this weekend. I know you'll be down at Ford Field, and we'll catch you next week, all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely down for a Vegas trip, taking Troy Weaver with me, leaving him in the desert on my latest podcast that drops in about a couple hours. I make the case. Guys, Tom Goris, open up your ears, open up your eyes. Nobody's going to LCA. Sell the team chance. You got kids fighting in the stands. The product is so bad. Make the call. Bob Myers. That's the name. Bob Myers has to replace the bum and Troy Weaver. Bob Myers. Call. Make the call. The Pistons are sinking, and it's a disaster day after day. Make the call.
Hey, Bob Myers, that's a great one, John. I can't lie to you. PR reasons, we got to let you go. we appreciate you, John. You're the man. Of course, the Doc, the voice of reason, joins us every single Thursday to give his take and all the information he knows. I appreciate it. I loved his response on J-Mo. That's something I didn't even know. He talked to J-Mo privately, and that's J-Mo's answer. He's never the first read on a lot of these throws, even though he's open. Good stuff from John. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll talk more about Aaron Glenn's comments and kind of ask John about it a little bit. Kendall Vildor, iffy, getting more snaps out there. Your reaction, how do you see this defense playing this week? Are they going to let Russ cook? Hopefully not. All right.